All right, I'm far from a cloud formation expert, but in my limited experiences of testing and playing around with things, I've found a few different ways it's going to fail and how you can address those issues and what it looks like. The first way it can fail is I have some bad files and bad things for us to look at. The first way it can fail is if you jack up the file so that it doesn't parse right. So the template format error, YAML not well formed. So that just means there's something wrong with your syntax. It says line 11, column 16, which is pretty nice of it. And I can go down and see, I know what I did. I deleted the colon. So put the colon back in, that should work fine. So if your syntax isn't correct, it's going to fail before it lets you load the file. If you actually provide a file that is syntactically correct, it will let you it will attempt to use that file. So the next way it's going to fail is if your file is fine, right? Your file is fine. Your syntax of your file is fine, but then when you go to create it, it's going to fail. Create failed, and if you look at the reasoning why, this is something I did earlier today when I was testing, unsupported property, subnet ID. So even though the syntax was fine, if we go look at my file, my broken one, and we search for that thing, subnet ID, that was the problem. Well, I know the problem is it's supposed to be subnet ID with a lowercase d because I did that earlier today. But that's another way it can fail, and that when that happens, you probably just need to look at the documentation and see what you typed incorrectly. Because if you go to the documentation, you should be able to see the properties of an EC2 instance. If you yeah, you can find the properties of the EC2 instance and go make sure you have the right thing. I'm not going to go through that right now. Another way it can fail is you have the proper syntax and you have valid properties and stuff, but the thing you're trying to do isn't legal in quotes, meaning you're trying to do something that's not valid. AWS will not let you do that. So I accidentally did this earlier when I was testing too. So let's go ahead and show you what that looks like. It lets you go through. It lets you go through and do the things. It lets you go through and do the things and launch it. Oh, and it failed. And it gives you a message why it fails. So you can use that to try to figure out what the issue is. Security group and subnet belong to different networks. So if we look at my broken 3, this is one where I was trying to launch into my custom VPC. So I specified the security group to use. I specified the security group to use. The security group exists in my custom VPC. So it did not like that. So I needed to specify oh, that's the wrong file. I was for this one I specified the security group to use, but that security group exists in my VPC, and I didn't specify my custom VPC, and I didn't specify a subnet ID to put it in that VPC, so the instance was getting loaded into the default VPC where that security group ID does not exist. So for that to work, I would need to specify the subnet that the security group is valid for. So that's another way it can fail. And then the final way I saw that it could fail was it actually looks like it works, but the thing it's supposed to be doing is not doing. So let's let's try this one. I gotta get my I gotta get a AMI ID. Yeah, so this one is going to look like it works. I mean, it's not. It's gonna start the thing, but then it's going to not work. So now if we wait for this one, it's not going to eventually say create complete, I don't think, because it never gets the output back. But it's going to start trying to create, and you're going to go look at your instances and be like, oh, my instance is there. Here's my instance that it started. It's running. So you're like, oh, that's supposed to be a web server I was trying to start. So let me go connect to that web server. Oh, and the site can't be reached. So in that instance, what I've done is actually connect out to the instance and try to figure out why it's not working. So in this case, this instance was supposed to be a web server. So, oh, is the web server working? So it's not listening on the web port. So what should I do? Is the service there? It's not. It didn't get installed. So in this case, you can go look at the log files in var log, and I've found these CloudFormation log files to be the most useful. And cloud init command log and cloud init output log were the two I found to be the most helpful. So let's look at the cloud init command log. Cloud init command log. So we look at this command. It is trying to install stuff, and it failed. So in this case, it says yum list available PHP, no matching package to list, exit with error code 1. So in this case, I tried to install PHP and it failed, and that's why nothing else was installed. So I find that to be a little annoying. If you look back at that log, it's doing yum list of these processes, and for PHP in particular, if you do yum list PHP, it doesn't find anything. But if you do yum install PHP, there's something somewhere so that works. So in a previous lab we did, when I initially wrote this lab instruction, if I can find what I'm looking for. Yeah, when I initially wrote this lab instruction, I did not have PHP 8.2 here, and it still worked because I guess it just tries to install it without listing it first. It went from the user data. So imagine my surprise when my CloudFormation using those exact same entries I had failed, and that's why it failed. It failed because I did yum. It did yum list PHP and it wasn't there. So that was a very specific example of my issue I had. But again, if it looks like it might have worked, but then you can't get to the thing you're supposed to be able to get to, then that could be the problem where you should go check the log files and try to figure out what happened in the install process. In this case, I don't remember if it eventually fails after it times out. So right now, I imagine CloudFormation is waiting for this output to come back before it can create, and that output's not going to come back because the processes didn't finish properly to provide that output. So I don't know what's going to happen, if it's eventually going to fail or not. I don't remember waiting that long to find out. I just was deleting them when they failed. So anyway, those are the 3 or 4 ways you might have trouble with CloudFormation. 1, your template is not syntactically correct, so it won't load. 2, you have something in your template that is not correct for Amazon. Remember, I had the capital D for image ID or subnet ID or whatever ID I did. 3, you try to do something that's not legal, like trying to put a security group on an instance that doesn't exist in the VPC it's using. And then 4, it looks like it's working, but it didn't really work. So.